Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. I am just pleased as punch. The weather has spring has finally sprung. Those of you who are crawling from under the Arctic temperatures of the Midwest, I say welcome to warmer weathers. It is so much better, and I feel alive. Here in Michigan or the Midwest, I think the entire Midwest, our winters are so bad, not only because they're cold, not only because of the snow, because we have cold and we have low temperatures and we have ice and we have snow, and then we don't see the sun. But it is an amazing feeling out there. James Bradley, I don't know where in the world you are right now or what part of the country that you are in, but hello, Mr. Bradley. So great to have you on today. But we're going to get into our conversation. We got a really, I think it's an interesting show, but we do have a lot to talk about. Normally, as you guys would know, we would have my main man, Mark Bassett, to my right, but unfortunately, is he out of the woods?
I'm in Louisville.
Jonathan, can we bring
Louisville,
Jonathan
my birthplace, man?
to the social media stream? Jonathan, you're here with me.
Hello.
The last time we talked, I think Mark was like climbing mountains or something, or
Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
he was singing
West
with
Virginia.
the Gatlin boys. Just a rhinestone cowboy. But he is not back in the studio, but he's with us today. As you have seen, John B to my right, he's not in his normal place.
No.
That's because we got some new guy.
Yeah.
Matthew, he's in here. He's looking.
I've outsourced my production job here.
I said Matthew's name, and Matthew looked at me like a deer in headlights, like, what's going on? He is in here. He's going to be working with us on today. So excited. Sharice Steele Phillips, Alma Collier, those of you coming to the social media stream, so good to have you. Let's bring Mark into the place. Mark, where are you, my guy?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, my birthplace.
Oh, so Mark, we had an interesting, we did speak yesterday, and not to spoil what we're going to talk about today or even what he might say. I just wanted to first say, Mark, welcome back to the social media stream of United Shades of Gray. We're so glad to have you today.
Good to be here. Sorry I missed last week.
Hey, it happens to the best of us, especially when you're just jet setting across the country, checking temperatures.
I'm not jetting this time, man.
Checking temperatures in the oceans and all. Are you working for what is the name of is it the EPA that makes sure that our ocean temperatures are okay?
I can't imagine it's the EPA.
What is it? I mean, who are
NOAA is the
NOAA?
NOAA, National
Oceanic.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're who I go to for water temperatures.
Okay, so yeah, so Mark is out there. I think Mark is secretly working for them because he's been from coast to coast. Checking out the beaches. So Mark, so you are currently in Louisville. What's happening in Louisville?
Well, I think obviously unfortunately made the national news on Monday. And
let's talk about it. We always talk about what's hot off the press. Mark, you happen to be our reporter about town in the thick of things. It's one of the things that we're going to talk about today anyways, which was the mass shooting in Louisville. Go ahead. Let's talk about what's happening.
Yeah, well, I was on my way. We spent Easter with my parents and then one of our sons and his wife in the D.C. area. And we were driving to Louisville Monday morning, and my dad called me to let me know that there had been a shooting in downtown Louisville. It happens to be, I'd say, about 10 blocks from my hotel. And actually, Mary and I walked past it last night after dinner. My grandfather had a business down here on Main Street way back in the day. And I was walking to that building and walked past the bank where it happened. There was a little memorial out there, flowers on the steps. They had a number of TV crews on site, as well as police and security.
So was it all boarded up then, Mark?
Yeah, the window, it looks like either he blew out or stray bullets blew out the front glass door. So that's boarded out. They've got police tape around the front steps, and there's someone set up a little, there's five crosses at the bottom of one of the set of steps, flowers, and they've left pins where you can write notes on those crosses. as well. Mary and I stopped and said a little prayer for each of the 5 people that passed.
Wow.
So,
For those of you who are listening, I guess maybe if you've been under a rock, you don't know by now that there was a mass shooting that occurred in Louisville, Kentucky, and 5 individuals were killed, as Mark was saying, with the crosses. The crazy thing about this, and Jonathan, you let me know. I'm kind of curious what Madden is going to say as well. But anyways, when we look at this, the crazy things that he went live on social media. So he live streamed his actual encounter and his attack live on social media. They're saying now, and I'm not going to say his name. One of the things that I think that I'm going to stop doing is I'm going to stop saying these individuals' names. Because I don't want to bring any attention to this. And so many people people are thinking, oh, I'm going to get my 15 minutes of fame. I want to commit suicide, but I'm going to do it. And everyone's going to be talking about me. No, we're not even going to say your name, buddy. But anyways, varsity hoop star, turned banker. I guess the word is that he found out that he was going to be fired. And so this would be more of a typical, I was wondering how we were going to frame this. So this would be more of the typical, when we say you're going postal, example of, guns being used in such a crazy way. Thank you so much, Pastor Ben Smith, who's here, who is in Bay City. I don't remember the name of your church, but he is a new pastor in the city of Bay City. Prayers for all of the victims and families. He sounds so pastorally. I'm going to work on that, Mark. I'm gonna work on.
You gotta be who you are, Kareem, man. That's what makes you you.
I'm gonna work on sounding a bit more pastorally, not pastorally, pastorally.
Conflicting reports of like there was, was this guy going to be fired? Was he not going to be fired? I've seen a few reports this morning out of Louisville that no one actually knew of that, or that wasn't necessarily the case. For sure, he had been struggling with mental illness. The families come out pretty clearly that they were working with him to try to get him some help for some mental illness situations, whatever they were.
Well, I want to be clear about what we say. Yes, depression, anything that you're not in your best state is mental illness. Let's say that first of all.
So he was clearly it appears depression. He had been clearly struggling with depression.
Yeah.
But again, no one ever sees this coming. I mean,
coming. Mark, I think we all have our moments in our days where, hey, come on, I ain't too well today. Today, in the Black community, we say like, I am the one, and we say I'm not the one, and they both mean the same thing. Like, I'm the one today. No, I'm not the one today, but they mean the same thing. And it's funny because we all have these moments where we are not okay. And like you said, Mark, we can't decipher when we are not okay is going to turn completely left and become something different.
Yeah.
What I want to make
I think we've talked about this. I had a boss and a friend who became a friend who committed suicide when he lost his job that no one would have guessed or saw coming. Nobody. And he went from being on top of the world to killing himself in a month. It was just startling.
I mean, it's just how the cookie. That sounds bad if I say how the cookie crumbles, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
It's how things work out sometimes.
It's how things work out sometimes. Thank you guys are going to make me be better at communicating these things and not sounding like such a jerk. Okay, yes, we give too much attention to. I'm not going to do it. But Gethsemane Baptist Church. Those of you who are listening, if you're in the Bay City area, go check out Pastor Ben Smith at Gethsemane Baptist Church. He is a riot as well. But yeah, so we're looking at this. The reason I brought that up is because I don't want us to think that this is someone that has been walking around like, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Just completely lost and going to psychiatric. He's not the kid. He has had severe bouts with depression, which I think is important. I think that we all, Mark, do you guys think that people really understand depression? Do we as a nation that we don't understand depression?
No, I don't. Again, I think any sort of kind of form of mental illness, there's still a bit of a stigma. There's not as clear an understanding of what that is and what you can do about it. I think there's still a lot of room for growth there.
Mark, now what is interesting is we have another young guy, and I don't know if we can turn our cameras around on this guy. So Matthew, for those of you who listen to us on a regular basis, we've got another young guy. He is looking like a deer in headlights. It's okay, Matthew. It's okay. If he comes again next time, I'm sure we're going to give him another name for himself. But Matthew, how old are you, Matthew?
I'm 17 years old.
Oh, listen to speaks into the. You taught him well, Jonathan. He's in here. He's a trainee. He's one of our training, and this is just your initiation process. So we're glad you did a great job. You leaned into.
Thank you.
Look at him. He's responding and everything. All right, but Matthew, do you think in your 22? You said
17.
17.
You're not even close, dude. Are you paying attention, or what's going on over there?
It's a compliment, Matthew.
Thank you.
You seem so mature.
Thank you.
You're 17. Well, that is good, Matthew. So do you think you understand what depression is? Like, has anyone talked to you really about like signs about when you're depressed? And there's a reason why I want to ask you that, Matthew. Do you think you understand depression?
I mean, other than we've had school assemblies and stuff like that, but that's more like anti-suicidal or like suicide and stuff like that. For depression, I don't think anyone's really sat down and be like, hey, if you're feeling like this or like this, you might be depressed. Depression, like more in our age, is more, from what I've heard, is like kind of, it's used as calling someone lazy. Oh, you're not depressed, you're just being lazy, blah, 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 stuff like that. But in a form of someone actually sitting down and explaining what depression is and what it is to be depressed, no.
See, and I think that's important. What about you, Jonathan? Because you're 2 steps above him.
Well, yeah, I think my first exposure to signs of depression is crappy. I probably shouldn't say that. Terrible TV commercials about antidepressants, and it's like, are you feeling exhausted? Are you? They've got the gray filter on it and everything, and
really,
no one sits down and talks about, hey, here's what it is, here's how it affects people.
Now, the reason I wanted to ask them that, Mark, is because these are 2, younger white guys, and in white communities forever, going and talking to therapists and counselors and things of that nature has been a part of, hey, you don't feel well, we're going to send you to talk to somebody. Now, in communities of color, we don't do this. You don't go to, you got a problem, you go pray about it, talk to Big Mama, you go to a pastor. We don't have those conversations. And so I'm thinking that a part of what's going on is that we are not adequately preparing young people. And I say this, we talk about grades, we talk about finances, but we don't really prepare
we do not
them.
Talk about finances.
Well, I mean, you may not, but I mean, we're now at a point that we're talking about finances, and we're, they got to get this, and it's going to be about STEM, and it's going to be about, passing the ACT and the SAT, all these things, but we don't prepare them like social-emotional training for them, or just education, so that they understand that if I'm feeling this way, this isn't a good thing, and this may be the inroads to depression. And I think that it's important that we begin to have these conversations, because we're going to continually just after the fact, like, oh, he was depressed, he was, mentally ill. But why are these young people, this kid is 23 years old. Why are they not 25?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, don't you think that's kind of young for this type of a level of depression to raise up, that he would lose it and then go this, and nobody has any clue? Who's talking?
No, I've seen it in younger, frankly. Again,
no, I get it. It happens, and I work with people from the psychological services, and they're saying, can you talk with people? But
frankly, the riskiest time for, and at least men, is like puberty to their early to late 20s is the riskiest time, because they're still developing, the body's changing, the brain chemistry is changing. And that's kind of like the riskiest time for these sorts of things many times.
Pastor Ben said COVID-19 pandemic triggers 25% increase in prevalence of anxiety and depression worldwide. That is a huge number. He says we got to stop sugarcoating these symptoms. So I don't know where we go from here. And I didn't want, part of me was like, I don't want to talk about the Kentucky shooting, because it's another shooting, but at the same time, there are 5 family groups, 5 friend groups, 5 church groups, whatever these people were, community groups that are being impacted by the loss of these lives that are here. So our hearts and our prayers are continually there. But we got to do something different. And I think just talking with these 2 young men, it occurred to me earlier today. I don't think we're talking about depression. We talk about suicide, don't commit suicide. But how many people are waking up and like, I think, today I'm going to commit suicide. It happens. But before we get to that stage, I got to feel not quite like myself. Am I making sense to you, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's something
Yeah.
that is gradual and compounds.
Okay, what were you going to say, Mark?
My other point, like it can happen really fast. Again, this was a guy in his 50s, super successful family, and he basically unraveled within a month. And I think, you've got to be, people around them have to see it and be willing to say something, because it sometimes takes courage to say something, but the person also has to be willing to get the help. And, if they're not, there's not a lot you can do about it unless you start putting them away. So
yeah, I mean, and so there is, this stigma with not being social or emotionally well or mentally well that we have, that we've been working at. And I think we're doing a great job with changing the stigma of going and speaking. I think we're talking about that part enough, but I think that we have to really begin to engage our kids. First of all, I'm going to tell you one of the biggest issues working with teens right now, that from the ages of 13 to 16. One of the things I realized is that our parents, we're not talking to kids. We're talking at them, we're preaching at them, we're telling them what they need to get done, we're telling them how important they got to be, ready for life. We're talking about all these things: get a summer job, be in band, be great in sports, but we're not really talking with them about how they feel. And I think it's one of the things that's going under the radar. And so there's a lot of probably of misdiagnosis seeds that we're missing because we're not having just general conversations. How you feel today? Where's your head at? What's going on in your world? And those are things, as I often say, I think one of the key pieces of our community that we have lost is the fact that we no longer have family dinner. And Mark, when you grew up, did you get all 95,000 of your kids like around the table? Mark has a huge family, Matt. Did you get all of your kids around the table? And
we did up to a point, and then as they got to a certain age, basically, okay, there's this event, there's that event, and so it was almost impossible. After like the first one got to high school, it was almost impossible to get everybody together for a dinner at that point.
Right now, you're 17. Don't put your mom on the spot because she'll call up here and she'll put you on punishment. No, I'm just joking. But do you get together on a regular basis with your family for like family dinners?
No, we do not. Usually it's just one person eating by themselves. Sometimes like the kids will eat by themselves, or sometimes we have family dinner, but it's not usually a daily thing. Usually about probably 1 or 2 times a week.
What about you, Jonathan?
Hardly ever. Yeah. That's an interesting.
Jonathan's working. Jonathan's a working man now. He's not, come on.
But people have worked since the beginning of time, though, Mark.
Yeah.
But what were you going to say?
But the family doesn't sit down and eat, even if one person is absent. Really, it's kind of, hey, dinner's on the counter in the kitchen. Come get it. And sometimes we'll gather like in the living room. We're all watching TV or whatever, but we don't sit down at the table and have really family dinners unless it's some special occasion.
Why don't we get rid of dining room tables and just start putting pool tables in the dining room? We're not sitting at them anyways. And Mark, but I really believe, let's take it back. And this is going to date myself just a little bit, but there was America's Family. We knew the Cosbys in the 80s, early 90s. And I don't know if that's even a PC thing to say, Cosby, but what it represented on TV, right? But before then, there were,
Leave It to Beaver. It was one family show after another. I think the other issue is there's not the support mechanism or support group anymore that there used to be, in the sense of like, I'm here in Louisville and I have a friend still, and like his whole family still lives here. He's got friends that have lived here. but a lot of people, their families are, people have moved so much anymore. Like there's no more like a big family and neighborhood support structure around you anymore. And
Yeah.
so people are way more isolated, I think, than they used to be when people basically stayed in never mind the same city, the same neighborhood for generations.
And that's so very true, because so now families are raising kids. Well, I mean, with everything that's going on, most parents don't even want their kids going outside, let alone, the idea of, having the support of people around you. But Alma Collier says every Sunday we had family dinner after church in the South. When my husband was alive, we ate together every meal. This is what I'm going to say. As a kid growing up, I had what I would consider the kind of life as a kid I think every kid should have. It wasn't because we had a ton of money. That was not the case. But it was because we had dinner together every single day. It was expected that you would be home at a particular time. The phone call would go out because that's when parents knew where kids were. You weren't just off doing your thing and they had to hit you on a cell phone. No, you were somewhere where there was a landline, and if they couldn't get you, you were going to be in trouble when you got home. But we had family dinner. And when we got to family dinner, just as on shows like Leave It to Beaver, there would be a whole crisis that would take place in this 30 minutes. And, Beaver and Wally or whoever would get into their issues and get into trouble. And they would have all these things done. And by the time at the end of the movie, when it was time to get down to the family dinner, Dad had some word of wisdom that he would share because Mom always clued in. Dad, this is what's going on. And the whole crisis was solved at the end of the movie. Now, that is not reality, but what it did show is that when we come together, now we don't have kids making all of these decisions by themselves because we're talking about it around the table. Now there's wisdom that's added to a kid's situation. Now there's hearing what that kid is dealing with at school. Parents would then take that information, go to the school, talk to teachers and principals, and it was a sense of building a support system around kids just through conversation. And I said to my mom a long time ago, I grew up as a kid, and this is real life, and I think my mom's in the social media stream somewhere. Mark, when I was a kid, my mom and dad would make sure that we would go to a different restaurant to go out just to experience things, but to always have that time together. Every Friday, that's what we would do. Right now, I'm in my 40s, barely, and my brother is in his 30s. And even if we're, get together, when we get together and we eat, even if we may go in and just kind of sit around in Mom's room, we may come into the kitchen and eat in the kitchen or sit at the dining room table. We always find that time to be able to talk. And it's in those times that I find it, because I have no idea what my brother's doing. Our lives are so different, but at the family dinner table, we're able to catch up and find out what's going on. I want to say to everybody that's hearing me, please understand, yes, there's a lot of mental health that's going on. And a lot of that is because we are failing to do some basic things, which means just to keep in touch with one another and to make sure that we're okay. Mom is here. Here she is right here. Mom's always taking care of her boys. The children of today are really missing out. I think it's so vitally important. All right. So Mark, so what's happening? So you were around the space in Kentucky. There's a makeshift memorial, which I'm assuming happens all over the place. What else did you see? Or how's the community feeling?
I mean, there's not been a lot of, I'm in a hotel, so you interact a little bit, but they haven't really talked about it. I've been mostly with my friend or just Mary and I looking around. My friend, again, this is a relatively small community, so my friend knows somebody that knows this guy. And I won't tell what he said on air because it really doesn't matter and it's hearsay. But no one expected this. No one saw this coming either. So.
Well, we know what's happening in Louisville, and it's been happening all over the place. It's been happening in Tennessee. We're going to talk about Tennessee at the other side of this break. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with more United Shades of Gray conversations on race in America. I almost forgot what we were having conversations about. Stick and stay. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. I'm sitting here in the studio with John B. in the place to be to my right. And we also have with us Matt. Matt, what's your last name again?
I'm Matthew Lester.
Matthew Lester. And we got Mark in the social media stream.
Is Matthew in high school? Is that what the deal is here?
I'm not sure if he's in high school or where you at, Matt? Tell us about yourself. Who are you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm in high school. I'm a senior. I'm currently dual enrolled. I go to Delta for part of the day. Today was SAT testing at school. So in order for seniors to get an excused absence, they've had to do something, either go to a college, visit a college, job shadow, or community service. And so I thought, hey, might as well do something good with my time and come into work.
Well, so those of you listening, Matt is not just a child prodigy, okay? He has been shadowing my producer, John, today, but you have some experience in broadcasting because you have been covering hockey games, correct?
Yes, that's right. I do the home Saginaw Spirit games. And then I also did the SVSU football games too while they played.
All right, so he has a little bit of experience. We're glad to have him in the studio today. Before we went to break, we were talking about gun violence. I want to bring that back up because it's going to lead us directly into this next story. And it's interesting, Mark, because I believe you called me, man. It's been a week now that you called me like these guys are idiots. And I'm talking about the Tennessee legislators.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Tennessee legislators.
I think I did say that though. So.
Yeah, who voted out the congressional two of the African American men. It's been all over the news in their congressional body. They were step representatives. Excuse me, Justin Pearson and Justin Jones. They were moved on April 6th of last week, I think it was. There's a supermajority of Republicans in the House that I guess someone put them up and said, hey, we want you to make this motion. Someone seconded it. They took a vote and it passed. And so they were removed. And the reason that they were removed was because they were bringing, there was a gun violence protest because there was a shooting in Tennessee just last week. It seems to be happening all over the nation. And they were protesting these representatives who happen to be very young individuals. They're part of those young, inspired individuals who are really going to fight for change. Said, hey, bring this fight to the floor, and which is a bit unorthodox. We have not seen people bring protests to the floor in this manner, and they did. And so they thought that this was a big enough situation for them to remove them from office. They voted, and that's what took place. The only problem with this situation, well, one of the problems, is that there were three individuals that were involved in the whole thing. Two of the young African Americans that I've named already, Pearson and Jones, and there was a third woman who's a representative who happened to be a white representative from one of the districts, and she was the only one that was not targeted for removal.
Well, I wouldn't say not targeted. She won by one vote.
That won. She was targeted. You're absolutely right, Mark. Thank you for correcting me. She also went up, but she won by one. And was not removed.
I'm interested in the logic of the
Mark, can I finish the beginning of the story? He is in the story. Oh my, that's why I need you in the studio so I can put you in a headlock. No, but Mark, we actually were talking about that. No, the thing that wasn't. Go ahead, Mark. I'll let you go ahead because
I would love to be talking. I would love to be able to talk to the guy that voted not to exclude her, but the other two guys, of what the logic could possibly be. Yeah,
because I think she sabotaged the situation really well, because she said the only reason she wasn't voted out and these other two was because she was a white woman.
Yeah.
And so, I'm going to tell you right now, politics today, these younger individuals who are coming in, those who are truly inspired and not just trying to make names for themselves, they're not backing down. And what I love about this, Mark, and we've talked about this on several occasions, is that younger people don't see race. Those who have been allowed to just kind of grow up, unless they've been, raised by, this group in this particular area, not allowed to go out and been told what to think. Younger people, as it relates to race, don't see the world the same way that we do. And I think that the younger that you get, the more race pales in terms of its importance. And so we saw, looks like all of Tennessee show up and fight for these two young representatives. We know that Justin Jones was reinstated into office. And today, as a matter of fact, as we're speaking, there's a meeting underway with the Congress in Tennessee to see if they're going to reinstate Pearson. Now, the thing is this: they're being reinstated as temporary reinstatements, and now they're going to have to actually run again for those positions. It's going to be interesting to see what happens and how this story plays out. What were your thoughts? What are your thoughts about this, Mark? Because I know when we initially talked, you like these boneheads.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I get that they're basically trying to make the claim that they didn't boot him for the gun protest. It's more the decorum of, and I get that to some degree. To me, I don't, expelling them just seems ridiculous, and maybe a warning or something. Obviously, somehow the middle-aged white woman staying in just makes it even more preposterous. And I think, if anything, all they did was actually help these guys' causes and their careers, frankly. So they have done nothing but do these guys a tremendous favor. And so it's like just so massively mishandled. It's unbelievable.
When you see this, Jonathan, what were your thoughts? Do you think that this is, I guess my question is this, do you think this is like an isolated situation?
Well, I guess it depends on what you think motivations are. And assigning motivations can be kind of a dangerous thing to do.
No, I agree.
I think that everybody there was acting immature. The whole bringing a bullhorn onto the, what was it? Congressional, was it House or Senate? State House or State?
I think it's the House floor.
State House floor, and you can have those opinions, you can voice those opinions, but we're not gonna. The protest that's outside should not come onto the floor. That's my opinion. January 6th, great example there.
Absolutely.
You don't bring that inside. You don't bring that into the halls. This is a place for us to sit down and figure these things out.
Are you talking about January 6th when the tourists were touring the U.S. Capitol building and taking pictures and just being good tourists?
I'm talking about when the protest came into the halls.
I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
We can have a whole conversation on that. But also the response to it of, all right, you're out of here. I think that while it may be justified with their rules, it was a bad move politically because, like you said, it only helps them. The best way to handle it would be, we're going to take the high road. We're going to sit down and we're going to be the adults and talk about this and make it work. Whereas,
well, there's a problem, and I agree with everything that you said, Jonathan. I think that there's a problem that that could be overlooked in this situation. One, as an African American male, I have a tendency to feel like this is kind of what happens all of the time. We're just in a time and a space and a place where people aren't buying, politics as usual. And I tell people all the time, it's funny because I tell people that outside of there is nothing in the United States that exists to me south of Tennessee until you get to Florida. Like, I don't do the South because I don't like the mentality. South Carolina, what is that? Where is that? It's like a foreign country. I've never been. I don't have a desire to go. I think I drove through there on accident, turned around, got back to North Carolina. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't do those places because for Black America and for people who understand, and when we think about Jim Crow, that's not very far, and that mentality yet exists down there, and we've seen it in politics before. My family's from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that area down there in Maringouin, and we've heard the stories. So this is like old time justice, but it met a new time community, and I think that young folks, Black, white, Mexican, they're not feeling. You're not going to just push them in the corner and tell them what to do anymore. If you're going to do it, you're going to say why. You're going to express why did this rise to this occasion. And the remarks were this: we have sex offenders that are serving, in our Tennessee body. We have individuals who are felons that are serving, and you guys are removing us for this purpose. And I think that it brought to light the fact that we're seeing a revival or a changing of the guard is probably a better sense in politics. And you turn on the news station, the faces are younger, and with that changing of the guard in these various areas are going to be changing of perspectives. And so I'm excited about that, seeing how that happens.
I think the change in perspectives are great. What I don't like is the actions and the tactics and the rhetoric that I
Absolutely.
see, which has become extremely divisive. And you take someone like AOC, who I'm not sure she actually is, other than getting hits on her social media page and getting paid to show up to events to speak. And it's not just her, it's both sides. So you just see the same sort of Matt Gaetz on the Republican side and there's no desire. You're never going to accomplish anything with the kind of rhetoric and the behavior you see. You're just not.
You know what's interesting though? Whenever I hear someone who is typically, I'll say a Republican, they always refer to AOC.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't pay attention to AOC. I mean, like I told you, I am a GDI. I'm an independent. I couldn't tell you very much about AOC other than what I was hearing on the news concerning her. I don't know her policies, her positions, and it seems like she's kind of faded into the background of things. And I think that there is a self-promotional piece there. But if I were to name names of people who have done things, Republicans always say AOC. What are other names on that other side of the ticket?
Oh, there's a lot. Marjorie Greene Taylor or Taylor Greene or whatever the hell her name is, Laura Boebert, Matt Gaetz. I mean, the list goes on, frankly.
But that's what I'm saying. So I think that we have to begin to dial back the rhetoric, which is what I think you were saying, Jonathan. And we've got to have some common sense policies. But I think that we also have to understand that there are some good old boy system networks out there that exist. Sure. And I think that this is a perfect example of that. We'll spare, I told the guy that was on trial for the murders in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, that was shot. Like, when you stand up and you support Black lives, and I didn't even put that into the discussion, the whole conversation about the pardoning in Texas. We'll get to that later. But when you support Black lives in the manner that some of these individuals are doing, you're going to get the same kind of justice that they get. And it was interesting that they were foolish enough, and I think that's the term, that they would spare this white woman knowing that they had just expelled 2 African-American men. I don't know the order in which it happened, but there's no way in any kind of sense I would allow that to be the narrative. Even if this is what I wanted to happen, I'm never going to let that be the narrative. And they were foolish because I think that this is what they're used to happening and nobody paying attention. And I think that now, Mark, cameras provide a window into places that have never had light shined on them. And we see now that people do have power when we stick together. And so I want to thank Matt's generation for making change happen.
Let me ask you, do you think that the
expulsion... Jonathan, that sounds, you came real heavy journalist on me. Like, okay, Jonathan is a journalist. Like, he does. so you guys have 2 individuals here, and he came at me real journalistic. Like, go ahead, John. What's up?
Do you think it was motivated by race?
What was motivated by race?
The expulsion of Pearson and Jones.
I think the expulsion was motivated by race. However, I don't think that the anger that came to push that as a tactic was necessarily motivated by race. I think it was motivated by the fact that folks on the right don't want to talk about guns. I don't care when people are dead and because there was just a gun shooting there, a massacre. So they don't want to talk about it. So I don't think that was racially motivated. I think that was more motivated by the fact of, I don't want to have to deal with this. And you're bringing this, not only are you bringing it to the table, but you're bringing it to the floor in a fashion that we're not used to, which is out of order according to how we operate.
Yeah, that's not really how you should do business, frankly.
Yeah, and that's not how you should do business. So that's how I feel about that. But I think that I always tell people, when you get into a closed ballot box, who you are comes to rise. And if they were going to, there was not why would she be, did she just have one more friend? Maybe that was it.
It could be.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask the question because while we can't really assign motive, it's a valuable thing to ask.
No, but we can look at what is
Yeah,
what is
I mean, it's
happening
pretty
at the
hard
street
not to
over and over
conclude
again.
that. I mean, ultimately, who knows the motive? But
Yeah.
when you do that, it's going to be the obvious conclusion the vast majority of people make.
Yep.
And you got a white woman saying that's the reason.
Right. And so again, like, I don't know who the leaders are down there of the Republican Party,
Idiots.
but they should be like kicked out. If I were a Republican, I would be so upset.
And not kicked out because they expelled them, kicked out because of how they handled it. They
Exactly.
There
Yeah.
you go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Now we are going to talk about something, Jonathan, you just made pop into my head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this show has not gone according to script whatsoever. But we got to talk about this. In Texas, the governor has, I don't know if he has done it, but he's seriously considering a pardon for the young man who had killed someone that was a part of the Black Lives Matter protesting down there. Story has it as it goes. The stories that are being the words that are being purported in terms of what happened is that this young man had an assault rifle that was a protester. I think it's another young white guy.
Okay.
Had a assault rifle because black men carry pistols. We know this all day, right? No, I'm just joking. He had an assault rifle. He approached the guy who was, doing whatever he was doing, and the guy said that he felt threatened, and he shot him, and so he killed the protester. After going through and looking at everything and looking at all the facts and the details, the guy who killed the protester, the Black Lives Matter protester, woke up that morning and I guess looking at what was happening and what was taking place and made, social media posts to the effect of today seems like a good day to kill some Black Lives Matter protesters or whatever.
Oh, God.
So all of these things are going on. There is an entire trial that takes place and the trial comes to a conclusion. They find him guilty. And like 2 days later, the governor is now talking about pardoning the guy who just 2 days prior was found guilty of murder of this protester.
Talk about poor optics.
It's
Look good.
So what are your thoughts? And I know that maybe this was not something we were slated to talk about today, but understanding those basics. Had you heard about this at all, Mark?
No, I have no clue what you're talking about. I was just
Oh my
on
gosh.
Google to see if it was on a feed stream, and I haven't seen it. I mean, I've often, again, I didn't look at the details of the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, but I was stunned when he was found innocent.
Well, I mean, it was the same. It's similar situations. I think
but he was found innocent. How? I'm not sure. This guy sounds like he was found guilty.
Yeah.
The governor feels the need to pardon him. I don't know why.
Well, do we think that that's an overreach? Just on the merits of what's going on, because he has been
on the
found
surface, it sure
by
feels like it.
peers to be guilty. There's a whole appeal process.
Well, then why do pardons exist?
Well, because my personal thought, Mark, what is your thought? My personal thought is pardons exist when there are circumstances that may have not shed light fully. The guy may be guilty. Yes, he did it. There was a crime. There's some extenuating circumstances that are a part of this thing. He has never shown this. This was too extreme. So we're going to pardon him because of those reasons. Not that
I don't know that I've ever heard of someone getting pardoned for murder unless, new evidence came up that, okay, this guy, DNA evidence, okay, this wasn't the guy after all. Again, I don't know the reason for the pardon. I'd have to understand why does he think 2 days after he's found guilty, he should be pardoned. I'm not quite, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense because it's to me, it seems almost like tampering with the judicial system and the process. He's got an appeal. Let him go through the appeal. But he didn't think that he should spend that time in jail, in prison. And so that is the status of what's going on. To me, these things are crazy. Everything goes on in Texas that seems like people just get away with. Texas and Florida are very unique places. And it's crazy because so many Michiganders are moving to those states. And it's kind of like, I'm going to put them on the same list. I got Mississippi, Missouri, and Alabama. They won't exist in the South for me anymore. What are you going to say, Jonathan?
I don't know. You're writing people off because of their beliefs at that point.
What do you mean?
You're well,
I'm not going to go anywhere
and say I'm not going there. That's fine. But to call people wrong,
they won't get my post infrastructure dollars. Go ahead.
Okay.
What'd you say?
Well, no, I think it's an interesting stance to take. I
No,
think that
the reason I say that is this, and I'll explain to you. When where my family lives in Louisiana, and when we would go, it is literally it's Maringouin. I said Baton Rouge, but it's actually Maringouin, Louisiana, and you are like literally backwoods, on back roads. Across my great grandmother's home down there was across the street from a huge ravine. You're in backwoods Louisiana, and just as it took 2.5 years for folks to realize that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed, a lot of what takes place down there still centers around and has not been changed by laws that we see in progressive states and even in the U.S. Capitol. There are some places where you still don't get service as a Black man when you go down there. And I think that to Northern American white folks, that sounds like really crazy. But I'm not going anywhere where I am not being seen as a whole equal human and have the same rights. So those states don't exist to me because I'm not treated. I
understand what you're saying, Kareem, but I would caution you on the rhetoric, because that what you're implying is everybody in South Carolina is like that, and what you're probably talking about is a certain percentage are like that.
And when I say that, then I think those people who are not like that should stand up and roar. There's going to be an interesting opportunity for them to show how progressive that they are, because I just saw just today that Senator Tim Scott, who I have a great deal of respect for, he has been seen as the unifier in the Republican Party post the Donald Trump scenarios. He has now announced that he is going to be running for president. So he's doing a fact-finding mission. So here you have it, a very conservative African-American man who has been in the Senate since 2011, who has been seen as a unifier, as an idealist, something that is very needed on both sides of the aisle. Let's not talk about what the other people aren't, but let's talk about what we hope to be moving forward. He has a lot of the qualities that we say that we need. However, he is a senator in South Carolina. We'll see how much. And he polled number 7%, as it relates to people thinking that he might be a great president in the state that he comes from, after Nikki Haley and Trump and DeSantis. So it'll be interesting to see what takes place and how that happens. I don't know about y'all, but my experiences when I go to places like that are not always the most friendly. So I stay away. They don't exist to me because I don't exist to them. So who has a problem with that?
That's a fair assessment. You talked me through your thought process there. Okay. It's okay. Not that it wasn't okay, but it's okay to hold that belief.
So your thought is what? Your thought is that we should not necessarily put. Go ahead.
My thought is everybody should be working to better themselves in those aspects, especially. It's unfortunate that those ideologies still exist, especially here in the greatest country in the world. But coming in an offensive, attacking manner isn't going to change anybody's mind.
I didn't attack nobody. I just said if I don't exist, neither do you. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're taking a very passive, like, okay, fine, you get what you want here, which I think that might be the right way to handle it.
Yeah, ain't nobody trying to be down in the backwoods of nowhere. I certainly thank you guys. Mark, it's good to see you. I can't wait till you're back in the studio. We want to thank you guys for being here today. An hour goes by so fast. We'll see you again next week with more United Shades of Gray.